And we, the First Presidency, will be guiding you through the rules and regulations for the new garments that are going to be soon distributed throughout the world.
You're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
I have a hole in my stomach!
I can't go back.
Welcome to the She Became Visible podcast. I'm your host, Rene Steelman. This podcast is my story. It's your story. It's our story. It's all the stories of all the women who one day knew that it was time to remember who they were, who they are, and stand up and be seen.
Welcome to She Became Visible. Ladies, have I got a show for you today? I actually have the First Presidency who will be speaking today. We have the prophet, Sister Martine Smith. We have the first counselor, Sister Lila Tueller, and me, the second counselor, Sister Rene Steelman. And we, the First Presidency, will be guiding you through the rules and regulations for the new garments that are going to be soon distributed throughout the world. So let me bring on the First Presidency so that we can share our wisdom, our sage wisdom that has been accumulated through age and experience. And we want to share it with the world so that we can stop the confusion and the chaos and really get down to what's important when we're talking about sacred things. Welcome, Prophet Martine and First Counselor Lila Tueller.
Whoa.
How are you guys today?
I'm great.
Yeah.
How are you, Lila?
Fantastic.
Okay.
Except I want to know why Martine's the prophet.
Yeah.
No, because
Someone, right?
it's her wisdom and her accent. Because accents give you 32% more brain cells, I have discovered. You know, when I listen to all these podcasts, it's like, dang, I just had an English accent. People take me way more serious.
True.
You know? So anyway, thank you, ladies. And I want to just introduce, we really are going to be talking about the new garments. And all three of us have left the church. We're not trying to wear the new garments with our porn shoulders. We don't have on garments
I
anymore.
should have worn some porn shoulder shirt.
You're change, girlfriend. Get that stuff on.
It's too cold for me, but okay.
Yeah, that's right. You guys are in cold weather. The church has come out with a new garment that will be distributed, they promise, sometime in 2025 to the world. They announced the new garment and they explained that this garment was brought about because of people who live in hot and humid parts of the world, and they're just trying to accommodate these new people. I love people in America, like in the summer last year, we had a record of the weather over 116 degrees for over, I think it was over 120 days in Arizona with no rain and that amount of heat. They've never had that amount of heat before. 116 degrees. Then in other parts of the country, you've seen the horrendous humidity and tornadoes and fluctuation in weather that people have never seen before. So it's not like we don't get hot in America. There is a humidity.
And humid.
Yes, I grew up in Illinois. I know what humidity.
Midwest.
Exactly.
I
My
live
daughter
there
was
too.
in Houston, you know. I remember going down and babysitting and taking the little kids to the park. And by the time I got there, their faces were flushed and mosquito bites all over their face and sweat pouring out, you know.
Right.
And it was funny because how many of you are familiar with Jasmine from the Scripture Central or something? She's an apologist for all things Mormon. She made a thing about the new change in garments. And she said, they're doing a pilot program. They're doing they're going to be testing these garments out in other parts of the world. And I'm like, is that what God does? Does God do like, let's have a focus group? Let's send out a few garments and get some feedback and then decide if I'm going to give a revelation? I'm like, that's your apology? The point is, the new garments are coming out. I don't know how people in our generation are going to take those. A lot of people are uncomfortable at our age exposing their arms anyway. So for a lot of older women, they're not going down to Deseret and buying these new tops. That's not part of their wardrobe. But the new girls are thrilled. So let me show you a video and we can start the conversation. Oh, I love it.
That's the way every day goes. Every time we've known.
Garment friendly, how to be stylish with your garments. Now, I don't know about you, but my garments would never have worked on a pair of shorts that short.
Show me the shorts again. I
Okay.
didn't notice her shorts.
I know it was quick. Let me do it again. Shorts.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Shorts.
Yeah.
That's the way every day goes. Every time we've known.
She likes
then-
to cross that leg over, doesn't she?
Yeah, and even that hole in the
You want
knee.
to go first, Lila?
Well,
Yeah.
could I have worn those shorts?
Could you have worn those shorts with the garments that we?
No, not unless I hiked them way up. And even then, because my legs are kind of on the thinner side, it would come back down and hang down below those shorts. There's no way there were no garments that short.
Okay.
How tall are you, Lila?
5'6.5".
Okay. And what about you, Martine? How tall are you?
I am 5'5".
Yeah, you're about my height. So I'm 5'4". I have like a 30 inseam. So yeah, there's no way. The funny thing about that is it's not that we're short. It's not that, some people have thicker thighs than other people. The garment was literally designed to fall at the knee because there is an emblem that is embroidered into the garment that reminds us to be on our knees and to pray. It's part of the covenant. It's part of the temple ceremony.
And
It is meant to hit
Renee,
you at the knee.
yeah,
ahead.
you and I wore the one piece.
Yes.
And with the one piece, there was absolutely no ifs or buts. It went down to your knee or even below.
Yeah.
There was no other option.
Yeah, unless you were 5'10".
Yeah. I had a girlfriend that was 5'10", and she would wear these shorts, and I'd be like, Lori, do you have your garments on? And she'd be like, yeah. She would get the petite, but those were the two-piece. It wasn't the one piece where you could get the top in one size and the bottom in another size.
When you went to purchase them, if you were not short enough, they would often, meaning the ladies that were selling them, especially before it was self-serve, where you had to go to the counter and ask for them, they would judge what size you needed and tell you that you didn't qualify for petite. But I had an experience. I had two, but I'm only going to tell you one because that's the most recent one. About 9 years ago, still, I wasn't wearing garments, but I was still buying them. And every time they made changes, and I was like the reference person in my ward. I was still active to tell my buddy friends what they had recently done to the garments. And I bought some, it was in 2016, and they were so short, they were like boy shorts.
Oh my gosh.
They may have been petites, but I had bought petites before and they were never that short.
Yeah.
They were just like this short. I wish I had kept one because I showed them to a relative and I said, look how short they are. And we both agreed that there was like no leg really in those garments. I don't know how long it lasted or anything like that, but
I never saw those.
But sometimes it was also like the luck of the draw because even I had a male family member who was getting married and he was home and I had bought new garments and I heard him scream in the bathroom and I went, what's wrong? And he was wearing J. Crew shorts always and the 9 or 11 inch inseam.
Yeah.
And he had worn those since his mission and they always worked with his garments. He was screaming and I said, what's wrong? And he said, those new garments, they fall below my shorts that I've always worn.
Yeah.
And he was wearing the mesh, so it wasn't a matter that they were going to shrink in the wash. They didn't. So you know what I did? And it didn't bother him, as faithful as he was. I put a hem in them and I put a new knee mark. But that's because by then I had some experiences. I had some experiences with garments not being, coming home and like garments being short, actually garment bottoms being short, and actually going back and saying, do you see how short these garments are? I want them longer. I actually did that.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
they made me some custom garments.
Yeah.
And instead of following the instructions that we had carefully written with the help of the little beehive lady, that I wanted them 1.5 inches longer in the leg, they made them 1.5 inches shorter. So I had these really short garments. And at that point I said, they don't care. Why do I care? Why should I care?
Well,
Why
and
am I trying to pull them down to my knee? They don't seem to care.
I remember a number of years ago, I was in the Relief Society presidency, and that we all kind of went away for the weekend. And one of the ladies that was a friend of mine told me that she was one of the people, like you're saying, she was like on a committee where they would send her garments. They're going to try out the Carinessa or the new fabric.
Right. I got the Carinessa.
Yeah. And
she came out.
I said, they're sending out sample garments for you to give them feedback. I mean, I was blown away that they had that kind of thing.
At least they made some changes based on feedback,
That's true. Well, even the 2-piece came because of what was that? Kimball was in the hospital and he could see the garments underneath. And that split that you got with the one piece, you could not hide that underneath a pair of pants. You would have a pair of pants and you could see the lines, and then there was your butt and then the split.
And you were always back there trying to get them to close.
That was the worst. I have trauma from seeing my mother bend over in a dress with those on in the back.
She needs post-traumatic stress therapy. It's so true. And I wore the one piece mostly. I had 2-piece, like you were saying, for certain outfits, but mostly I wore 1-piece because I couldn't stand having layers, the elastic from the bottom, and then then your jeans or whatever, and the elastic hit you above the belly button, and then your jeans hit you below the belly button. I couldn't stand that.
You could hike them up.
Yes.
They make low rise now, but they wouldn't make low rise for decades.
No.
They were way up here on some people. I have a long torso, but my daughter's was short, and they would come up to her bra.
I'm short, so you could fold them up over your boobs.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So when you guys went through the temple, or when you were getting ready to wear the garments, who gave you instructions, and what were the instructions that you were given?
I was endowed in the Ogden Temple on the 17th of August, 1974, 3 days before my wedding, the following Tuesday. And the matron told us, this is word for word, I can't believe I've never forgotten it, next to your skin, day and night, every day of your life. And that's what I went by for 3.5 decades.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
What about you, Lila?
Same thing. Bra was to be on the outside. The garments were close next to your skin. I was told by my mother-in-law that you should wear them during sex. And her husband said, you don't have to do that. But she said, well, that's what I was taught. And that's what I believe. So I thought, I had all these things going on in my head, picturing her and her garments and him. Yeah.
And if you've never seen the one piece, if you've only seen 2-piece, you think, well, you can't have sex with garments on. But with the one piece, it was actually
you
could.
Yes. And they did, apparently. So
would not recommend.
It was very, very strongly worded. You were not to take them off for any reason except bathing,
swimming,
like showering, swimming, but you're supposed to put them right back on.
Yeah.
There was no out in your bathing suit for hours
and right after sex too. And we did
right back on.
Yeah.
Those things back on. So and they were never to touch the ground.
Yes.
Thing.
Yes.
So it was.
Wash them separately.
Oh, it was
I didn't hear that, but my husband was taught that on his mission. And because busy guy, the entire, all of our lives together, everything went into the laundry. I did the laundry, and he didn't know where the garments were going. He just knew that they reappeared magically in his drawer. And so then after he retired and our kids were grown and gone, we have separate bedrooms. We love each other. It's not a problem. But he does his own laundry now. And, and we've got one of these large capacity washing machines, and he's doing this, 4 garments in this. And I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, you're supposed to wash your garments separately." I said,
I didn't know
"With
that.
who? When did you hear that?" She goes, "Oh, my mission president taught me that." And I said, "Well, for 48 years, they've never been washed separately, and you managed to get along just fine, but whatever." But I had never heard that. And it was like you say, but they never touched the ground. It's like the American flag, they were sacred.
Yes.
They were sacred. And so that's so funny. And I had a bishop that said, that they were supposed to be worn close to the body. And that he says, "I know that some people say that you're not supposed to take them off for sex, but you can take them off for sex." I was like, "Okay." But it's funny. I remember going to a bridal shower for my cousin, my oldest cousin in the family. And she was a teacher at BYU. And so she was out in Utah, and we'd all gone out for the wedding and all this stuff. And so we're at this bridal shower, and she's opening up her gifts, and she's getting that. Okay, you guys will remember, what's the name of that lingerie company that was so popular in like the 60s and 70s?
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're opening up all these nightgowns, and they're like, "We had such a hard time finding nightgowns with sleeves."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm like 16, and I'm going, "Mom, why did the nightgown have to have sleeves?" And she's like, "Oh, honey, you'll understand someday." It's one of those things. And even after I got married, I'm like, "Nope, still don't understand why I don't know who's wearing that, but the lingerie that I bought for my wedding night did not have sleeves." So it's like, even at 16 and 17, and even like at 20, I knew enough to go, "Come on, we're going to have sex. Give me a break, come on." And so it's just hilarious. But the bra over the garments thing was a absolute nightmare for me, because they raised up. My bra was always sliding over the garment.
Yeah.
Pretty soon my bra's up here, and I'm having to kind of, find a way to tuck it back down again, because those stinking garments are slippery.
I never had that happen. I do remember, by wearing it over the top, you could pull it down and get a little lower neckline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes you could kind of tuck the garment underneath, and then if you wanted a little bit more décolletage,
And if you bought the full cups because you wore a full cup, you had like too much cup, because all these gathers in the bra just
and they would show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the other thing, that sometimes I'd have a bra and it didn't have enough padding in it, so you could see the emblems through the bra.
For your clothes.
Now I got to wear another layer. So the funny part about this one is that her little being stylish and being I think they're calling themselves garment girlies now. And I just want to throw up. But they're like, "How to be stylish in your garments." She's got on a freaking t-shirt and a pair of jeans. I mean, come on. And I want to look at this again. I want to see where that little t-shirt is hidden. That one, that's long. That's short. Oh, see how that was. I think that's why she's putting her hands over her stomach, is because actually those were a couple of crop tops.
What I wonder about all these young girls, because we're all very mature. How were they wearing them before? Were they wearing them before? Were they some of those young women who were wearing them when they felt like it, but not when what they wanted to wear didn't work with garments? Or were they wearing garments 24/7 as instructed before? Okay, it's not my place to judge, but why all this excitement?
I have 4 daughters, and I also have lots of nieces. These girls have never really taken seriously wear the garment all day, every day. It's always been a little more, if they feel like it, or, they'll put them on at night before they go to bed or after, whatever. They don't wear them all day.
Or on Sunday, or
they'll go to work out in the morning and then leave their workout clothes on most of the day.
Yeah.
And which was a big no-no. We were told not to do that. And we had our friends and our leaders watching us and taking notes and saying, "Oh, so-and-so was caught at the grocery store in her workout clothes.
Or in her front yard.
Yep. I saw her out in the garden weeding and she wasn't wearing her garments. These are the kind of things that we heard. And I don't think that these girls are hearing that same thing.
No,
I
no,
don't.
we're not.
Much more relaxed now.
That's the joy of not growing up in Utah. Not, so we did have the last place that we lived before we moved to Arizona, we did have a neighbor next door, but we were on acre lots. So, we still had a fence in between us and the whole bit. And they just weren't the kind of people that did that. But that was it. The whole neighborhood, they were the only LDS people. So we didn't have that. We didn't have, in reality, because I did the same thing. You go to work out in the morning while your kids are in school. You rush around. You do all the errands. You're not going to go home and change. You're going to go to the grocery store right afterwards. You're going to run all your errands. Then the kids come home at 3:30 and you start fixing dinner. It wasn't a disobedience, screw you thing. It was like, I got dressed at 7 a.m., got you kids off to the door. I've been running all day long. I'm not changing my clothes. And but I didn't have that. I didn't have people at Harmon's going, oh, Sister Steelman, what do we have on today? I didn't have to grow up with that. Well, let's look at another. Let's look at another.
Yes, let's look at another.
Oh, the new slip dress and why it is literally amazing and such a game changer. Number one, it's amazing to sleep in. Number two, it's so lightweight. Number three, you can wear whatever you want underneath it. If I had the slip dress pregnant, like game over. And then there's nothing on your belly or your tummy. I just feel like overall it's so much more flattering. If you're wondering where the slip goes to, so you can see the slip goes to right about there. So I'm 5'3", so on me it's definitely a little longer. However, I had my friend who's a member of the church try it on, and she's quite a bit taller than me. She's like 5'7", and I would say it went to about here on her. And the nice thing is with the dress, when you're like moving, like if you're bending over or moving and your dress is a little shorter, the slip's gonna move with it rather than like the previous shorts where they like staying in place. So if you walk, then it's like showing, right? So that's what makes it really convenient. Anyways, also this dress is $8. You need it.
Where are these guys getting? Is the church sending these influencers the garments so that they can talk about them? Where are they getting these garments?
I don't know.
One thing I saw yesterday, one of the influencers, I think, said, or no, it was in the Trib article by Peggy Stack. She spoke to someone who has, like, her mother-in-law was in Korea. So she put the return address as Korea. Her mother-in-law got them and then shipped them to her. I have a friend I talked to yesterday. She said, my family member is going to French Polynesia. I might ask them to bring me some. They have contacts, but it's also possible since there is a list of people. That's the only time I got a sample, but I did get the Karenessa before it was out.
Yeah.
Apparently they want the word out because a year ago, there was retrenchment from the brethren and the sisters, reminding the young women, the young married or endowed women at least, who are not wearing them, who are wearing their workout clothes throughout the day, their yoga pants. It's almost like they want a fashion show. They want multiple fashion shows.
Yeah, interesting.
So that those young women can maybe look and say, oh, maybe I can wear garments again. Maybe I'll wear garments.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I went and got my hair cut the other day, and I get my hair cut in Gilbert. And if any of you know anything about Arizona, Gilbert and Chandler are basically Provo and Logan. And so, it's just little Utah. And so in this particular salon, they're all Mormon little girls. They all have blonde extensions down to their waist. They're just as cute as they can be. This little girl, she's getting my hair, ready to go wash. And we're just talking about how nice it was, the other day. And she says, yeah, I spent 2 years in England and boy, it just rained all the time there. And I said, why were you in England? Well, I was doing a mission. I was on a service mission. And I thought, okay, is that the way that you say I was serving a mission? If you don't know if the person is LDS or not, because if you were evangelical and you went somewhere, you said, well, I'm doing a service mission, and everybody
you were wearing what you're wearing, right?
Yeah.
So
I was wearing a see-through top, basically. And so I said,
this lady's not LDS. She's not going to get it.
Exactly. Yeah. So then she said, yeah, my parents came over to visit me. And I thought, okay, so when your mission was almost over, they came over to pick you up. It was a beautiful sunny day. And I didn't want that. I said, no, that's not the way it is. Anyway, she was just so cute. She was just the typical little Mormon, parted down the middle, long, all the way down to the waist, blonde extension. And so once she told me that, so I start looking for the garments because she's got this little white little thing on. I'm trying to see, all right, where's your garments, And she had the little cap sleeve that came to about right there. And so she hasn't gotten the new ones yet. She's still wearing those. She just looked as cute, had on jeans like this little girl. And I'm like, do we need videos? I think pretty much everybody's figured out how to wear a cute little tank top from the Gap and a pair of jeans.
Yeah.
I just love that they think, oh, I have garments on. Let me show you a long, oversized t-shirt and baggy jeans. Aren't I cute? I'm like, okay.
Outerwear styles, cute styles with garments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and like the rest of us never figured out how to wear garments with a cute dress, or we didn't know how to wear leggings underneath our skirt so that maybe we didn't have to worry about the garments.
Did you see the one where the girl has on skin toned?
Yes.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
they look like black tights or black sheer. Remember?
Yeah.
And a teeny tiny little mini skirt over it.
I got
I'm
snarky
wearing
on
my
that.
garments.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. Lila, I wish I would have clipped that. I'm going to see if I can find that when I edit
I
this
was
and put it in.
dying over that.
Because
It was
that
like,
was
you're missing
hilarious.
the whole point of why we had garments.
Yeah, she has a 6-inch skirt on.
Yeah.
But she's got
Yeah.
these flannel lined tights so that she was nice and warm, and they hid the garments. And look, I can still wear my garments. And that where I was like,
My mini
okay, what are you not being told about this underwear? It's not just I've got long underwear on. These are supposed to be sacred garments. And my thing was, my daughter lives in Houston, and there's a pretty good sized Muslim community around where she's at. And so we went to a football game, and there's this gorgeous woman sitting in front of me. She's got on a baby blue hijab, and it's totally covering her hair with a beautiful pearl pin holding it in place. She's got on a denim shirt all the way to her wrists, and then she's got on a nice pair of jeans and some sandals. But of course, the jeans covered all the way to her ankles, right? She was gorgeous, very stylish, all of this clothing, the color palette, everything was very hip and new, but she didn't have on like a piece of 4x4 section of cloth bobby pinned to her hair and said, what? I'm wearing hijab. No, that's not how it works. Or I thought to myself, because at Halloween, when you go to the Party City and they have like fake sleeves that you can put on that look like tattoos.
Yeah.
And I thought, can you imagine a Muslim woman putting on arm covers that are covered with tattoos going, what? My arms are covered. I'm covered. What's the deal? That's sacred clothing, ladies. They might be wearing a beautiful scarf, but it's still covering their entire head. The sleeves have to cover, just like the Hasidic Jews, they have to cover all their arms. They have to wear leggings underneath their skirt. That's their sacred clothing. So these little girls, I'm like, you are almost blaspheming, whatever the word is. You're taking this sacred garment and you're going, how can I modify this and be so cool and hip and wear the clothes that they're selling at, Abercrombie and Fitch or Anthropology? See how I can make this sundress work. And that's the part where I'm like we were talking, I know that they claim that boomers, old people, they don't like change. And you're just mad because you had to wear those ugly garments for so long. And you're like, you should just be happy. 'Cause I have a granddaughter. I'm sure she'll go on a mission. I'm glad that when she goes to the temple, she doesn't have to hear the old ritual that we had to go through. It'll be different. The point is, Martine, tell us what you said before we started. It's not that we're not grateful for the change. It's the fact that when we were taught the gospel, these were rules that were life or death.
Right now, I feel like we're being gaslit by being told, oh, that was just cultural. Oh, they're not showing your shoulders. That was just cultural. It's just the members were saying that. No, the story I told was that 20 years ago, I was we had an area conference at the conference center, and L. Tom Perry was the final speaker. I actually stormed out noisily in the middle of his talk when he said, and make sure your babies are dressed modestly. I cannot imagine any outfit a baby wears that is immodest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Except in the eye of the beholder.
It sexualizes the child, the infant.
Exactly.
Their sweet little innocent body is somehow now not okay to be shown. When you go through the temple, Martina, I didn't mean to hijack your point. Did you want to elaborate on that?
That was a member of the Quorum of the
Yeah.
12
Yeah.
20 years ago. That was not his opinion.
Yeah.
We all knew what he meant. The idea of covering up babies for me is more recent, like 20 or 25 years. I don't remember that being said 30 or 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Babies were babies. Of
Yeah.
course they wore onesies. Their little chubby legs showing in their cute little shoulders.
Yeah.
Mm.
But you're exactly right, Lila. It was a form of sexualizing a body, teaching that a baby can't wear a two-piece bathing suit. But I was half naked when I was a child. I mean, I didn't grow up in the church. And so I would wear these little sun suits that were all one piece. They had the little spaghetti straps, and, and they were like bloomers, they were like bloomers. So they weren't even shorts. And I remember I would come in the house because, back in our day, we were all kind of free range kids, right? And I would be naked and my mom would be, "Where are your clothes?" And I'd be like, "Well, I'd wet my pants and I didn't like my pants, so I just took them off." And nobody looked at that like, solicited anything.
Oh, that child. Oh,
yeah, you're just a
Rene,
child.
you want me to tell the story about the article in the Friend?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so that's also recent. That's from, I think, 2013, 2014. I'll have to look it up. But I know my oldest granddaughter was about that age. So she's almost 18. So probably. There was this article in the Friend. And remember, the Friend is an official organ of the church. Okay.
That's right. Everything's gotten okay from the head.
There was an article that got a lot of talk in my circles. So the article is of a little girl. It's her birthday. She wants to go to the zoo because mom said they're going to the zoo. Her mom said, "Okay, but you have to have breakfast first. And why don't we go up in your room? Grandma has sent you something." So they go up in the room, and on the bed is laid out this cute little dress, little white dress with little cherries and little spaghetti straps and little bows. Little girl looks at it and says, "Oh, but it's not modest, Mom." And mom goes to her dresser and says, "Let's see what we can find that you can wear underneath it." Now, no more t-shirts under whatever.
Yeah.
Because we don't have to cover the shoulders. So we were told it. And one other story, and this is third hand from a really good friend of mine whose good friend was invited because they also have focus groups on garments. So it's probably at least 25 years ago. It was before I got involved with the garments too much. My friend's friend was invited to a focus group on garments. This was done by the General Relief Society Board. So there was somebody from the General Relief Society Board moderating this focus group. And the first thing out of her mouth before they could discuss anything was, "The sleeve is off the table. It will never come off. The brethren have told us it is non-negotiable. It's not coming off." We're not crazy.
Yeah.
Now I'm happy. Yesterday I texted a good friend and I said, because she used to message me and say, "I want to wear," she's faithful to a T. She's just so faithful. And I said, "Okay, so she's in her late 50s. She may be 60 now." And so I said, "So you're going to get to wear those tank tops you were asking me about 20 years ago."
Yeah.
And I'm happy. I said, "I'm happy for you that you stuck it out." That's not why I left the church. But anyway, you stuck it out and you get to finally wear.
It's funny you would say that because I had forgotten. I was with my granddaughters. We're out at the mall. And on one of the mannequins in the front of JCPenney's, there was a dress that was very similar to what Michelle Obama used to wear. You know how she would wear like a jewel neck and then just a short sleeve. That was it. And my little granddaughter said, "Why is that girl dressed immodestly?" And I remember thinking, I was talking to my daughter, and there was a primary, one of the primary instructors would stand up at primary and say things like dressing modestly. And also she would make comments about girls that color their hair and how that's immodest to color your hair. And I was like, okay, that should have been just nipped in the bud immediately. But now that dress that Michelle Obama used to wear is now kosher. Now that's been approved. Let's look at another one of these young girls that are going to show us how to live our lives.
Look, we haven't talked about this yet. That's a new garment style that's coming out. It's literally a half slip, like what you would wear underneath a dress that's see-through, a slip. I have it on here, and I have it with this dress, literally exactly where the slip hits me. You can see it here, right above the knee. If you're taller, obviously that's going to be shorter, and it's also going to depend where you put it. Like right now, I have the slip right where like a high-waisted jean would go. Obviously, you can pull it up higher or pull it down lower. It's that same sheer.
Wait, can you pull it up higher or pull it up down lower? That's
According
what we're
to her,
talking
you
about.
can. According to her, you can.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want.
I can pull it above my boob, and that, and that way it's just going to barely come below my panties. I'm like, no, you can't. That's not the idea, that you get to pull it up so that it, you can still wear that cute dress. Where are they hearing this?
I don't think they're getting the same lessons that we got. That's the whole thing. And I think we're missing the point a little bit in our conversation, just because these girls, they don't get it because they weren't taught what we were taught.
Yeah.
They're only hearing what they're hearing. And what we're trying to say is everything changes in the Mormon church.
Right.
What is doctrine and what was supposed to be immutable, never changing forever till forever, is changing.
Yeah.
Right down to the garments.
Right.
And we could attest to this because we were told A, B, C, D, E, and they're not being told this.
Right.
Or if they are, they don't care. I could be angry at these little girls. Really, who I'm angry with is the church.
Yeah.
Because they have changed their doctrine and then they pretend that they haven't changed it. They gaslight us.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And then we're also gaslight by these girls, lit by these girls because they don't know what we were taught.
Right.
They haven't been taught it. So
Yeah.
they're going, what's the big deal?
Yeah. Let me finish because you're absolutely
Style,
right.
super breathable fabric. I'll put a little picture of the fabric right here so you can see it. Literally ultra breathable. One saying it's amazing because it moves with your dress. So now when I'm walking, or before, the bottoms like aren't hanging out when you walk. It moves and flows when you bend over, or whatever it is that you're doing as a busy mom. The only thing I would say is like a little bit longer than what I hoped. I'm also only 5'3" and fairly short.
Well, she showed the length, which is way too long for those shorts that the other girl, the very first one I showed you, she would never be able to wear that. So I don't know what the deal is on that. But the other thing was, she could pull it up. The dress buttoned up the front. So there was a little about 4-inch slit at the bottom, and I could see the slip. I can see the slip. And exactly what you were saying, Lila, is like, look, I had a big frustration because I would find a skirt or a dress that hit me, below the knee or mid knee. But then I would turn around and there was a slit in the back.
Yeah.
And you could see my garments through the slit in the back.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was like, doggone it, and you have to have a slit for a skirt so you can walk. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Lila, talk about that more, because that's exactly what we're saying is like, when I'm watching these Instagram posts, I'm like, who is teaching you about this new garment and what are the instructions? And I haven't been to the temple since 2019. So I haven't even gotten the latest version. And so I'm like, are they not saying in the temple that every knee shall bow and the garment is meant to remind you to pray and to be on your knees? And then, like you say, this one reminds you to stay close, and this emblem reminds you.
Well, they're telling them something different.
That's what I'm wondering.
Peggy Stack's piece, I'm sorry, I don't have to pull it up.
I know, me too.
The very last comment she quotes is one of the influencers saying, now I realize that the garment was never about modesty. It was always about like covenants and having Jesus with me. But that's not what we were told.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. Let me show you this, because I think that's kind of amazing.
First, as to skirt lengths. After the trustees reviewed the standards of dress and grooming last spring, they made only 2 minor changes, both relating to women's clothing. They added culottes, slacks, or modest pantsuits, not to include Levi's, to the acceptable women's wear for attendance at classes, and they specified modest length as the standard for women's hemlines. The inclusion of pantsuits authorizes a style of dress that is clearly modest, however unfeminine some may think it to be. Standing by itself, the word slacks refers to a wide spectrum of attire covering the extremes between the dressy component of the pantsuit on the one hand on down to the grubbiest trousers only suitable to slop the pigs. The authorization of slacks for general wear on this campus was meant to signify the kind of slacks that are as dressy as one portion of the pantsuit. This new addition to the dress standards does not authorize the wearing of jeans, men's trousers, or other slacks from the grubby end of the spectrum, nor should it be understood to authorize the wearing of t-shirts, sweatshirts, or other similar attire. These two modifications must not be the occasion for a general deterioration of women's dress standards on this campus. The subject of skirt lengths is such a vexing one that I hesitate to mention it, but I must do so. The standard is modesty. Quote, "Modesty in dress is a quality of mind and heart born of respect for oneself, one's fellow men, and the Creator of us all. Modesty reflects an attitude of humility, decency, and propriety." That's from the Priesthood Bulletin of September 1970. Now, you will observe that this definition of modesty does not refer to what the girls are wearing in high school or at colleges and universities generally. It makes no reference to what the czars of fashion dictate or to what you see in the glamour magazines. At Brigham Young University, we have a style of our own. Those words, "a style of our own," were the title of an address given on this campus on February 13th, 1951, the year I was a freshman here, by Elder Spencer W. Kimball, now acting president of the Council of the 12. In that address, Elder Kimball referred to immodesty as a contributing factor in the breakdown of moral values. "I know I'm not going to be popular when I say this," he told us, "but I am sure that the immodest dresses that are worn by our young women and their mothers contribute in some degree to the immorality of this age. I wonder if our young sisters realize the temptation they are flaunting before young men when they leave their bodies partly uncovered." End of quote. I can vividly recall the furor that followed his criticism of strapless evening gowns on this campus. But I note that low-cut necklines and strapless evening gowns are still forbidden by our standards. And all that Elder Kimball said in criticism of excessive exposure and in support of modesty applies with equal force to short skirts. Young women, the principle of modesty, the commandment that you should avoid a tempting manner or appearance, is fixed and eternal and will not deviate. Don't assume that anyone will be impressed with your experience or your preference or your wisdom on this subject. With respect to lengths of skirts, there is a point which need not and probably cannot be defined in inches above the knee, where the wearer is calling attention to herself, exposing too much of her body, and sending off signals and inviting responses that are not consistent with the standards of the gospel. Girls, especially those of you who have not previously studied on this campus, please examine your skirt lengths carefully. Where you have any doubts, seek the advice of more experienced persons who are familiar with and supportive of the standards of this campus.
Oh, look at him.
You know, I was actually there for his first talk at BYU.
Stop it. You were in the
September
audience when he
1971.
introduced the family.
Oh my gosh, Martine.
I don't know why it's
Somebody took what the garment was supposed to be, which was supposed to be protection to you and a reminder of your covenants, and they turned it into a modesty statement. And then that got trickled down into all of the For the Strength of Youth pamphlets, that every kid needs to dress modestly and that you need to dress as if you're wearing garments, even when you're not wearing garments. So every girl who had a prom dress had to buy a garment appropriate prom dress. We had young women, I remember when I was a young woman, we had activities where you bring your prom dress and we had fabric there, we had sewing machines, and we would make them all garment appropriate. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, why? These girls were not, none of them were well endowed. They're young girls, 15, 16, 17 years old, and we're making them dress as if they're wearing garments. And it's just somewhere along the line, that whole modesty thing got blown way out of proportion. And now I feel like they're pulling it back and as if it never happened. But those of us who had to live through that, we're all saying, what in the world? I had a friend of mine who is still active Mormon came up to me. She knew that I had left. And she said, if they ever decide that garments aren't important, that they're not a thing, I'm going to be so mad.
Yeah.
I have lived my
Same thing. I have a friend who has said the same thing to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so mad.
Because
Well, that one girl, did you hear that one girl when she was talking about the slip and that you can wear whatever underwear you want? I'm like, oh, so now
new.
Now it doesn't have to be close to your skin anymore. You can wear a bra and panty and then put the slip. Well, of course you would, because the way that slip is made, it's literally loose fabric. So you have to wear your panties and your bra underneath that. Well, that again is contrary to what we were told
Right.
about having those things close to your skin.
Mm-hmm.
So Lila, it's like, I don't know how to get through exactly what you said. It's not that there's been change. It's the degree, the emphasis of why these rules were enforced and how eternal they were and how necessary that they be followed to the T. I want to see if I can.
What it tells me is that it was never important to begin with. If it's not important now, it wasn't important then. It's never been important. People have made it important, including the leaders, including the prophet, have made it important. But if you can change it later, that tells me it was never of God. None of this has to do anything with God, because God doesn't change. He doesn't change his mind.
I think
If
I
I-
have shared this before. I know I have. I've shared it with RFM on one of his podcasts, I think, a copy of a report from Quorum of the 12 Minutes, either 1927 or 1932, when the first presidency appointed 4 apostles to a committee to study potential changes to the garment 100 years ago. So they studied the changes. They talked to their wives. The wives were really excited because some of the members of this committee said, "Oh, we're going to do away with the garment, except
You only wear it in the temple. You only wear it in the temple." Yeah.
But
I've heard this.
Not only was that nixed, but removing the sleeve was okayed by 3 of the 4 apostles. They needed only 1 no vote to nix the entire thing. So
God's
100
not
years
talking
ago,
to anyone.
3 apostles who were specifically appointed. So who knows? There may have been more apostles who were in favor of removing the sleeve. Joseph Fielding Smith was on that committee, and my money is on him.
We know where that one went real fast.
So where's the Lord speaking to his leader?
Right.
Yeah.
Where is that? If on something this important, the Lord himself should have come down and said, so that they all heard it, they all knew what
they all agree. Yeah.
No, they're doing a vote. Everything is by committee. Everything is by survey. There is no revelation. This is what really pisses me off. It's not that these girls are doing this, because I'd probably be doing the same thing. I'd be going, yes, I can wear the tank dress.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
I'd be like, yay. But that isn't the point. The point is that we're not hearing anything from God. This is all men deciding our fashion.
And when you go through the washing and anointings, and they talk to you about the section where they say, okay, now this is the garment, and this represents the power of the priesthood, and you will wear this, and it will do this, and it will do that, and so there was a meaning to it. And to me, it's like, it's not the same as just saying, hey, we've decided to go to 2-hour program instead of a 3-hour program. That's a modern day, let's see how many people we can get into a building. That's not doctrine. That's not a temple covenant. And when people are talking about their temple covenants, and now you're even changing that, it's like, okay, that's a different thing. You know, when people are saying garments never had anything to do with modesty, it's not about modesty. And here you've got the next prophet, maybe. I mean, I think these guys are on a relay race here to see which one's going to die first. But right now, he's probably acting as prophet, because I think President Nelson is probably pretty disabled. You know, they're not saying that. So this is a guy that in 1970 made sure that anybody, if you're going to come to BYU, and what's funny is my parents joined the church in 1962. I was 12. We had to drive out to Salt Lake to go to the temple because we were living in Illinois, and that was the closest temple within Salt Lake Temple was closed. So we were down in Manti. So my parents got sealed in Manti. So we went to BYU, and my dad and I were walking around BYU, and I had on a pair of jean shorts. And I'm 12. And someone came up to us and said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave the campus. Jeans are not allowed on campus. And I was a convert and a child, but that's how important it was. So if these are the new garments, then obviously the BYU dress standards are going to change, right? You know, and here he's talking about grubby jeans. Well, I'm sure he's probably having apoplectic shock to see these jeans that have holes in them. And now these girls can wear these short little things, so they can wear jeans with holes in them, which is exactly what he was describing. It's not that you guys get to do something that we didn't get to do. It's that everything was decreed, as you said, Lila, everything came down as a decree from the mountain. This was like Moses coming down with the 10 commandments and going, you know what? Number 9, cross out number 9. We're not doing that anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. Oh, well, but you just said that God told you on that mountain that we had to do that. And they're like, never mind. You don't have to do that anymore.
We said that. Forget blacks can't have the priesthood. Never mind what we said about that it would never happen. Just forget what I said. I have no problem with blacks having the priesthood. That's not it. It's that it was said that it was commanded by God. This is the problem. None of this comes from God.
And that's the reality. And that's
Jesus, yeah.
So
let me bring up, it's a different topic, but the timing is also. So this week, there's also an article in the Tribune. That one is by Tamara Kemsley about the changes in the handbook regarding IVF, surrogacy. Even though they still have guidelines, this may be discouraged, but not strongly discouraged, which it was just 4 years ago in the handbook. Each one of those, I forget, some of the other reproductive choices that are available to couples now. Each paragraph ends with, but this is really the choice of the married couple, legally married couple. That's not what I was told in terms of when I started my family, how I did it, how many children I was to welcome. Nobody ever gave me a number, but they certainly say it in no uncertain terms back in the 60s and early 70s that birth control was evil, as Joseph Fielding Smith said, was just horrendous. Now it's up to the couple. Well, it should always have been up to the couple. They changed their mind. I mean, Tamara Kemsley was quoting from the handbook from just 5 years ago.
Right, just 5 years ago.
And it's changed yet. It's more lax. One funny thing, I know you all saw that from one of our friends in common who said she brought up the changes in the garments to her 93-year-old mother, who said, oh, line upon line, precept upon precept.
Exactly.
I said, oh, so then it should go the other way around. The garment should have been more minimal years ago. And now, as members are stronger in their testimony, they should cover more, right?
Good point. Why isn't it getting stricter? Yeah. Well, let's play one more and then we can close the.
Hey guys, I have the review for the new garment top. It is called the Women's Dry Stretch. Starting off with fabric, this is 88% polyester and 12% spandex. This top is almost identical, in my opinion, to the Carinessa, whatever that's called. The Carinessa is 98% polyester and 2% spandex. The biggest difference for me in this fabric is that this new garment is a lot lighter than the other one, the Carinessa. Next, we're going to talk about the style. So I have on a tank top that is almost identical to where the garment is going to fit on me personally. Everybody is different. It's going to fit different. For reference, I am 5'4" and I'm 110 pounds, if that helps. So here, I would say the sleeve is it's like pretty much exactly here. The Carinessa came up like in your armpit. This one I measured is 2 inches lower in the garment, so it's not even in your armpit. This neck you can't see, but it's actually a lot lower than what the original Carinessa is. It's a lot lower here, and it's a lot lower in the back.
And I think that her back arm is actually a little too wide. From what I've seen from some of the other ones, her sleeves would be a little bit too, and I don't think I did the one, did the one that even had on that top and she had to wear a tank top underneath it. Did you see that, Martine?
It's the pictures that the church has provided show that the top of the shoulder is covered on the mannequin.
Yeah.
So maybe on a real body, it fits differently, but on the mannequin, the top of the shoulder is still covered.
Yeah,
and on
that's what I
hers,
thought too.
you can see her entire shoulder. So
Yeah,
maybe,
and the back had a little
once
bit
you
of a
put them
cutout
on, and if
too,
you wear your bra over, then you can always adjust a little bit.
Why
Yeah.
didn't she just put it on? Why was she holding it packaged?
That's what I thought.
Did she
If
tie
she
it
has
on
the package, where's the
showing
garment?
where it was? Like she could have moved her fabric around a little bit and said, "Here it is. See, this is where."
Yeah. Well, I think that's what she was saying. Actually, she was showing that, but I don't know. One of the friends we have in common said, it looks to me like it's straight in the
Yeah.
front and straight
I
in the
think so
back.
too. I think it's a
We
straight
shall
shot
see.
all the way around. And that was my thing. It's like, don't make a video that says pretty much, almost, kind of,
Yeah.
because like you said, when the young lady showed the slip and she lifted up her skirt a little bit to show, it's like, okay, well, that's about where my garments came, about an inch or two above my knee. Because I always get the ones that were tighter around the leg. The first girl that showed the shorts and the romper, there's no way that there were garments underneath that. So I think that's deceptive as well. But it's going to be interesting. I'm curious to see when they will be released.
I mean, fourth quarter starts in October.
And why bring them out in the winter? I mean, isn't the whole idea that they
for
were?
for the rest of the country. Yeah.
I think the point also is it's not even so much the change. It's Lila, it's what you were saying, both of you were saying. It's the gaslighting around the change. If
It's
they
always
came out
the gaslighting,
and
isn't it?
yeah, if
Right
they
now,
just
every
came out and
change they
said,
make,
look,
they gaslight.
exactly. It's like we have a strong missionary program in Africa. Most of the women in these countries, these very hot, humid countries, wear dresses.
And they wear dresses.
And they don't wear pants. And so these garments don't work with our new converts where the church is growing. And we want to accommodate a new culture. We're trying to be a church-wide program that accommodates all cultures. So we're going to make some modifications so that we can include everyone. And then they would also say, and since we're doing this in the Philippines and in Africa, we're going to release them in the United States too, because it gets hot and humid there. And we understand now, and we're just admit it. Just say what you're doing. That's all we're asking.
They seem to have changed a policy. So 20 years ago, just before my husband was released as bishop, I had written, like on the back of a postcard at Beehive Clothing, some suggestions. Like I had been buying the 100% cotton chemise, which they made for mastectomy patients, so there were no seams. So you just had a shoulder seam and a side seam. I had made the suggestion, you just, how about adding some spandex? Because I was wearing those, but by 10 o'clock in the morning, when I pulled them down, they were this wide. You can't even see because it was cotton.
Stretched.
So it just kept stretching.
Yes.
I said, a little spandex would go a long way in keeping them close to my body. So that's why I got a phone call from a woman. Her first name was Marilyn. She was from Oren. She had worked for Beehive Clothing for like 20 years, and she was early 60s. She loved garments. She believed that it was okay to wear the bra underneath, and she always told young women that, but that she wanted the extra protection that came with having the garment next to her skin. That was her belief. It was her interpretation. I would say that was her culture. It was not church-wide. Nobody ever said that. They did chide you if you didn't wear your garments next to your skin.
Yes.
So one of the things that I remember she told me, I took a bunch of notes. I still have them. I took a bunch of notes because we had like a 45-minute conversation. And I realized, I need to write this down. One of the things she told me is that we do, and they were working on the Caroness at the time. And she said, we don't release a new style until we have manufactured enough for all of the distribution centers around the world.
Oh, wow.
That's not what they're doing with these new styles. They went with the hot and humid first. And I think in part it's so that they don't look like they're giving in to the little young ones who are now advertising, giving free advertising to them.
There's still some control.
Because they didn't want, which happened actually as soon as they showed the new styles, everybody said, sleeveless.
Yeah.
So, but you're going to have to wait for them.
Well, it's going to be interesting. And it's going to be interesting for those of you that live. I'm trying to remember if there's a shade store here in Arizona in Gilbert or Chandler.
They're still in business. I'm surprised.
I know. So it's like, okay, so once these come out, it looks from that one clip that I pulled. There's still going to be a tank top that isn't going to work because it's going to need to come over a little bit. So this little girl was talking about wearing a tank top underneath their tank top. So the shade shirt is going to change. They're going to start selling tank tops at the shade store instead of the little ones with the sleeves to cover the tank tops.
Yes.
So that's going to be,
So there you go with another layer, which is not going to keep anyone cool.
The 3-layer.
It's like, this is so ridiculous, you guys.
Yeah. And that's what that one guy said, that article that he said, I served in the military. He said, I served in Iraq. Do you know how hot it is over there? He said, I wore my fatigues and I wore my garments and I had on a coat and I had on a thing. And I did it because I was told that's what I was supposed to do.
In a pack, or like 100 pounds.
So
pack
even
or
the
whatever
men,
with
even
all
the
that
men are
gear.
going, oh, really? You're hot? Oh, I'm so sorry you're hot. But anyway, this has been fun, ladies. I thank you so much for sharing this with me. I just
We
thought,
could talk about garments forever.
well, it really is. I am excited for them to come out and to see the people at church. And I did say to my beautiful daughter, I said, it is going to be fun when these young girls start wearing tank tops to church to see all the old ladies' heads explode. And she said, yeah. And it's like, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they make it work. I mean, when my granddaughter went to EFY this summer and we went and visited her, we went to the Cougar Stadium and she was there at EFY. So we're like, oh, let's go have lunch with Paige. And so we go there and I'm looking at all these little girls that are at EFY. And every one of them had on shade shirts underneath their cute little spaghetti strapped thing. And, or something that was backless, but they had their shade shirts on. So they were making it work. They were all making it work. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they make it work or not make it work. It's, it's going to be a lot of like, honey, I can see your little slip there. You might want to pull that up a little bit, That's what we can do. So as old ladies. Sweetheart, you're going to have to pull that slip up just a little bit. I can see the bottom.
Up and over your boobs. Come on.
Over your boobs. Yeah. Then that mini skirt's going to work out just great for you, Madison. So, yeah.
And I actually remember full slips actually showing under dress when you move. So I'll be interested to see that.
Yeah, they really do. And they don't understand. Like the one girl that had the full slip on, she says, I can move around, I can bend over. And I'm like, can you though?
With me.
Yeah.
Because I remember being at church and seeing garments underneath, like you say, with the slit and the skirt and going, oh, she doesn't know that I can see her entire leg. Well, all right. Thank you, ladies. This has been an absolute hoot. So we will reconvene in October when they have been equally distributed.
Definitely, unless one of us can snag.
Yes.
A pair.
And get our hands on them. Then we'll have a full-on fashion show.
Time to go to a hot and humid climate. But I lived in hot, humid in Louisiana for 20 years. So in garments.
And and I have to tell you, when I
died. I hated summer.
When we lived in Oregon, I remember not putting my garments on to go to a doctor's appointment and was freezing to death. In Oregon, you've got that moist
sweat
air.
And
you're just kind of cold. I remember thinking, oh, I'm so glad I wear garments because it's so cold.
They do absorb sweat. And so that you don't have the tacos in your clothes as bad because you've got a layer of absorbance. I could see the benefits. I was cold all the time. It made me warmer. But now that I'm post-menopausal, I'm not cold
anymore.
I'm hot all the time. It's just really when the light dawns on your brain that none of this is real, girls.
Yeah.
Girls out there. Someday you'll realize none of this is real. The garments mean nothing. The temple means nothing. It's all made up. And on that day, you'll understand why we are having a problem with all of this.
Yeah.
It's not that we want to take your fun away. It's that the whole thing is problematic from start to finish.
And when their changes, when they go through their 20 years of wearing these new fun garments, and then the changes are, look, we're now going to be producing bras that have the
bras and panties with the markings.
The markings. They're going to be like,
or just wear them when you go to the temple, wear them on Sunday. And that's what they were saying a year ago. We see the young women are not wearing them. They're wearing their yoga pants and their tank tops. And, they're only wearing them to church or to the temple. And I was like, take a win. If you're not wearing them those two occasions, that's a win. They're being reminded because they're at church, so they're actually being reminded. But then they came up with it's a Jesus hug. Your garments are a Jesus hug now.
Well, what's interesting? I listened to a lady the other day talk about when the Catholic Church, when they went through the new Vatican stuff, And they took away the rule that the women had to wear veils when they were in church and their heads had to be covered. And they took that away. And they talked about how it was a humble and reverent a little bit. And she has decided as a Catholic that she wants to start wearing a veil again because she likes the idea that what it shows, the ritual, the whole bit. And I thought, if you really studied the symbolism between the Catholic Church and the Mormon Church, as much as the Mormon Church tried so hard to, the Church of the Devil, those evil Catholic, there's so many things that they do that are very similar to the Catholic rituals.
Yeah.
We lost that incense thing. Anyway, all right, ladies, I appreciate it. It was so great talking to you, and we will talk again in October.
Okay.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah,
Hey, Lila.
it was fun. Good to see you.
Bye.
Bye.